We are going to visit every single state to uncover the one dish that locals defend with their lives and outsiders view with absolute horror. We aren't talking about bad cooking. We are talking about polarizing cooking. Alabama, the tomato and mayonnaise sandwich. In Alabama, the debate starts with lunch. To an outsider, the tomato and mayonnaise sandwich looks like a mistake, a burger missing the meat. But locals defend it with religious fervor. The rules are strict: processed white bread, a thick slab of acidic summer tomato, and an aggressive amount of Duke's mayonnaise. The result is a sodden, disintegrating mess that you either love or fear. Chappie's Deli remains the sanctuary for this humid culinary artifact, ignoring the national confusion surrounding its existence. Alaska, Akutak, Inuit ice cream. Heading north to Alaska, ice cream takes on a darker meaning. Traditional Akutak is a caloric necessity for survival. Whipped reindeer fat, seal oil, snow, and berries. The intense, gamey aroma of seal oil is a sensory wall that most tourists crash into. At Beak Restaurant in Sitka, they bridge the gap using rendered duck fat, a modern twist on a dish that remains a texture shock for the uninitiated. Arizona, the Sonoran hot dog. In Arizona, minimalism goes to die. The Sonoran hot dog is a chaotic collision of borders. A frankfurter wrapped in bacon, buried in a canoe-like bolillo roll, and suffocated under pinto beans, onions, and jalapeno salsa. It is a target for traditionalists, who call it gluttony. El Güero Canelo is the undisputed champion of this beautiful, structural chaos. Arkansas, possum pie. In Arkansas, the barrier to entry is just the name: possum pie. Outsiders freeze, expecting roadkill. In reality, the pie plays possum, hiding a rich chocolate layer beneath mounds of whipped cream. It is entirely benign, but the psychological barrier keeps tourists terrified. Stobie's restaurant delights in serving this deceptively named dessert to nervous travelers. California, the In-N-Out burger. California's polarization is sociological. The In-N-Out burger isn't disgusting. It's just hated for being overhyped. Critics attack the unseasoned beef and the rapidly cooling fries, while fans exhibit cult-like devotion. It is a battle of expectation versus reality, played out millions of times a year at drive-thrus across the state. Colorado, Rocky Mountain Oysters. In Colorado, the menu requires a euphemism. Rocky Mountain Oysters sounds fancy. It is actually deep-fried bull testicles. While they taste like tender fried chicken, the biological reality induces an immediate gag reflex in non-locals. The historic Buckhorn Exchange serves them on a silver platter, testing the frontier bravado of every tourist who walks through the door. Connecticut, white clam pizza. Connecticut commits pizza heresy. The white clam pizza at Pizzeria Napolitana removes the tomato sauce entirely. It replaces it with garlic, oil, and briny, chewy bivalves. To a pizza purist, combining dairy, heavy garlic, and seafood on a charred crust is a crime. To a local, it is the only way to eat a pie. Delaware, slippery dumplings. Slippery is rarely a compliment in food, but in Delaware, slippery dumplings are a way of life. Unlike fluffy southern dumplings, these are dense, chewy squares of dough submerged in gelatinous chicken gravy. It is a texture that demands acclamation. Sambo's Tavern proudly preserves this heavy, mucilaginous comfort food for a deeply loyal clientele. Florida, conch fritters. In Florida, they eat the sea snails. Conch fritters require aggressive tenderizing to make the tough, rubbery mollusk edible. Even then, the texture is chewy, and the flavor is intensely oceanic. Outsiders balk at the rubbery bite, but at Alabama Jack's, frying this controversial snail is a daily ritual. Georgia, the Luther burger. Georgia pushes the cardiovascular limit with the Luther burger. It replaces the bun with a split, glazed donut. The collision of beef grease and sticky sugar creates a sensory overload that alienates anyone who cares about their arteries. The Vortex Bar and Grill is the sanctuary for this hypercaloric monster. Hawaii, Spam musubi. Hawaii offers a history lesson wrapped in seaweed. Spam musubi places canned, sodium-dense luncheon meat onto delicate sushi rice. It is a relic of World War II rationing that mainlanders view as a corruption of sushi. But at Helena's Hawaiian Food, this salty, gelatinous brick is treated with the reverence it deserves. Idaho, the ice cream potato. Idaho's obsession with potatoes has gone too far. The ice cream potato is a dessert engineered to look like a dirty tuber. Vanilla ice cream dusted in cocoa powder, split open and topped with whipped cream. It is a visual trick that confuses the brain and delights the locals at the West Side Drive-In. Illinois, the Chicago hot dog. The Chicago hot dog is polarizing because of its rules. No ketchup allowed. The Frankfurter is buried under a salad of neon green relish, sport peppers, and tomatoes. Critics say the toppings obliterate the meat and destroy the bun. Superdog remains the definitive defender of this aggressively dressed sausage. Indiana, brain sandwiches. Indiana crosses a psychological line with brain sandwiches. Battered and deep-fried calf or pig brains served on a bun. The texture is soft, almost custardy, a stark contrast to the crispy exterior. It is a mouthfeel that aliens cannot comprehend. The Hilltop Inn in Evansville is the fortress for this nervous system delicacy. Iowa, the hot beef sundae. Iowa continues the trend of visual lies with the hot beef sundae. Mashed potatoes mimic ice cream, gravy mimics chocolate syrup, a cherry tomato mimics the cherry. It causes severe cognitive dissonance. The Machine Shed champions this savory illusion, serving heavy comfort food in a dessert disguise. Kansas, bierocs. In Kansas, the bieroc is a lesson in dryness. These dense pastry pockets stuffed with beef and cabbage were designed for farmers to eat in the fields. Outsiders criticize the heavy dough-to-meat ratio and lack of sauce. M&M bieroc refuses to alter the moisture content of this austere, historical pastry. Kentucky, lamb fries. Kentucky's contribution to the offal catalog is lamb fries. Like Colorado, this is a euphemism for deep-fried testicles, this time from sheep. The flavor is stronger, gamier, and even more psychologically barring than beef. Kurt's restaurant serves these controversial morsels as if they were standard bar snacks. Louisiana, turducken. Louisiana is famous for flavor, but the turducken is famous for excess. A chicken inside a duck, inside a turkey. Critics call it a moisture-destroying gimmick that guarantees overcooked meat. Herbert Specialty Meats perfected this poultry monolith, a polarizing spectacle of holiday gluttony. Maine, grape nuts pudding. Maine's grape nuts pudding represents the austere Yankee soul. It takes the hardest, crunchiest cereal in existence and bakes it into custard. The cereal sinks, creating a gravel-like layer that outsiders find punishing. The Maine diner proudly serves this divisive, tooth-rattling dessert. Maryland, chitterlings. Maryland's soul food tradition includes chitterlings, pig intestines. The preparation involves hours of boiling, releasing a pungent aroma that clears rooms. It is a dish that demands respect and a strong stomach. Soul Sisters serves them cleaned and spiced to perfection for a dedicated local base. Massachusetts, Boston baked beans. Boston baked beans are a relic of history. Navy beans stewed for hours in molasses and salt pork. Outsiders view it as an overly sweet, syrupy corruption of a savory legume. But at Bostonia Public House, this molasses-drenched tradition is the bedrock of the state's identity. Michigan, the pasty. The Michigan pasty was built for miners. A dense pastry filled with root vegetables and meat, engineered to be eaten with dirty hands underground. It is intentionally dry and structurally dense. Outsiders demand gravy. Locals call that blasphemy. Gene K's Pasties defends the dry integrity of this controversial miner's meal. Minnesota, lutefisk. Lutefisk is the zenith of chemical cooking. Whitefish soaked in lye, a caustic soap ingredient, until it becomes a gelatinous, pungent jelly. Critics say it smells like a dead fish wrapped in a sweaty sock. Yet, Jack's Cafe preserves this Scandinavian ritual, serving the fish jelly to brave souls every winter. Mississippi, coulicles. In the Mississippi Delta, alchemy happens in convenience stores. They soak dill pickles in cherry Kool-Aid. The result is the coulicle, neon red, aggressively sour, and synthetically sweet. It induces aesthetic shock. Double Quick is the vendor of choice for this jarring, hyper-regional snack. Missouri, St. Louis-style pizza. It is hated for two reasons. a cracker-thin, yeastless crust, and Provel cheese. Provel is a processed amalgamation that melts into a sticky, plastic-like texture. It defies Italian tradition. Imo's pizza is the empire built on this smoky, divisive cheese that outsiders love to hate. Montana, pemmican. In Montana, history tastes like wax. Pemmican is an indigenous survival food, pulverized game meat mixed with rendered animal fat and berries. It is nutrient-dense and vital for winter survival, but the texture, waxy and lipid-heavy, is a shock to the modern palate. Ted's Montana Grill attempts to bridge the gap, serving this rugged frontier ration to tourists who often struggle with its intense density. Nebraska, the hot beef sundae. Nebraska shares the Iowa obsession with culinary deception. The hot beef sundae is a visual lie. Mashed potatoes pose as ice cream. Gravy poses as chocolate sauce. Shredded cheese poses as sprinkles. It creates severe cognitive dissonance. Shirley's Diner proudly serves this heavy, savory illusion to agricultural workers who value calories over clarity. Nevada, all-you-can-eat buffets. Nevada's polarizing food isn't a dish, it's a philosophy. The Las Vegas buffet, it is the zenith of gluttony and food waste. Critics despise the chaotic mixing of global cuisines under heat lamps, viewing it as a monument to excess. Yet, institutions like Bacchanal Buffet draw millions who want to eat crab legs and tacos on the same plate. New Hampshire, the boiled dinner. New Hampshire holds fast to the austere boiled dinner. Corned beef and root vegetables boiled in unseasoned water. Critics call it the epitome of blandness, a dish with no Maillard reaction, no spice, just texture. But at the Red Arrow Diner, this waterlogged artifact of settler survival is preserved for nostalgic locals who find comfort in the gray. New Jersey, pork roll, Taylor ham. New Jersey's polarization is linguistic. Pork roll, or Taylor ham, is a salty, processed pork log. Locals love it. Outsiders compare it to inferior bologna. The bitter civil war over its name defines the state. Pascarella Brothers defends this synthetic meat sandwich, ensuring its dominance over the Jersey breakfast. New Mexico, the green chili sundae. New Mexico is obsessed with green chili. They put it on everything, including ice cream. The green chili sundae pours roasted, pungent, spicy capsicum sauce over sweet vanilla dairy. It is a violent collision of hot and cold, savory and sweet. Calice's frozen custard fearlessly serves this palate-confusing concoction. New York, the Rochester garbage plate. In upstate New York, the visual chaos is intentional. The Rochester garbage plate. A pile of cold macaroni salad, greasy home fries, and burgers buried under meat sauce and onions. It is a culinary middle finger to refined plating. Nick Tahoe Hotz invented this caloric monster, a beloved disaster that horrifies anyone who cares about aesthetics. North Carolina, liver mush. North Carolina starts the day with liver mush, pig liver, head parts, and cornmeal formed into a gray block and fried. The metallic taste and awful origins make it a hard sell for the rest of the country, but at the Shelby Cafe, this gelatinous brick is the unwavering king of breakfast. North Dakota, no-flush soup. North Dakota fights the cold with starch. No-flush soup is less of a liquid and more of a solid block of carbohydrates, thick cream, heavy potatoes, and massive, chewy dough dumplings. Outsiders find it overwhelmingly heavy and monochromatic, leading to immediate lethargy. Kroll's Diner ladles out massive quantities of this winter armor. Ohio, Cincinnati chili. Cincinnati chili breaks every rule of Texas orthodoxy. It is a thin, Mediterranean-spiced meat sauce. Cinnamon, chocolate, served over soft spaghetti and buried under a mountain of shredded cheddar. It inspires deep rage outside Ohio. Skyline chili is the empire built on this controversial, sweet and savory anomaly. Oklahoma, fried okra. Okra has a biological defense mechanism, slime. If fried poorly, it becomes a greasy, mucilaginous nightmare. It is a vegetable that fights back. Cattleman's Steakhouse expertly navigates this precarious texture, serving perfectly fried pods to a populace that fiercely defends the controversial vegetable. Oregon, voodoo donuts. Oregon favors extreme eccentricity. Voodoo Donut puts bacon, bubblegum, and NyQuil, formerly, on pastries. It generates massive lines and intense hatred from culinary purists who call it a gimmick that sacrifices quality for shock value. It is the epicenter of sugar-laden controversy. Pennsylvania, Primanti Brothers sandwiches. Pittsburgh's Primanti Brothers decided that plates were unnecessary. They stuff vinegar-soaked coleslaw and greasy French fries inside the sandwich. Purists argue the moisture destroys the bread's structural integrity, turning it into a soggy mess. But for steelworkers needing a one-handed meal, it was, and remains, a masterpiece. Rhode Island, stuffed quahogs. Rhode Island takes the massive, tough quahog clam and buries it in breading, the stuffy. Critics claim the bread-to-clam ratio is a scam designed to mask the rubbery texture of the mollusk with soggy filler. Amaral's Fish and Chips expertly prepares this heavy, polarizing appetizer for the coastal faithful. South Carolina, fried pig ears. While chitterlings are soft, South Carolina's fried pig ears are a test of jaw strength. Layers of cartilage and fat, deep-fried to a rock-hard crunch. It is a texture that alienates many. Hannibal's Kitchen masterfully prepares this demanding offal for a deeply appreciative local community. South Dakota, chislic. South Dakota offers chislic, cubed red meat, often gamey mutton or venison, deep-fried and served on skewers with saltine crackers. No sauce, no garnish, just fried meat. The austerity and the gamey flavor make it a hyper-localized bar snack that baffles outsiders. Meridian Corner keeps this rugged tradition alive. Tennessee, biscuits and gravy versus foraging. In Tennessee, the polarization is a backlash against pretension. While modern chefs push foraged weeds, locals reject this elitism in favor of biscuits and gravy, a dense, caloric sludge of flour and pork fat. Loveless Cafe rejects modern trends to serve this heavy, historically accurate carbohydrate bomb. Texas, Frito pie. Texas Frito pie is the antithesis of refined dining. Chili poured directly into a foil chip bag. Critics despise how quickly the chips turn into a salty, soggy mush. The iconic Texas chili parlor serves this dish in varying degrees of painful spice, unapologetically embracing the sodium overload. Utah, Jell-O salad. Utah is the Jell-O belt. But it's not just for dessert. The Utah Jell-O salad is a structural marvel that defies logic, suspending pasta, marshmallows, and even shredded cheddar cheese in lime gelatin. It is a textural chaos. Chuckarama is the buffet institution where these bizarre gelatin matrices are worshipped. Vermont, raw milk and maple creamies. Vermont's controversy is biological. The staunch defense of raw milk, unpasteurized dairy, clashes with federal health agencies. It is a libertarian approach to agriculture. Along with the maple creamy, a heavy maple soft serve, Morse Farm Maple Sugar Works champions these rich, legally controversial dairy products. Virginia, Brunswick stew. Brunswick stew began as a way to eat squirrels and opossums. Today, it's chicken and pork, but the texture remains, a thick, porridge-like density of meat and lima beans. The lingering association with rodent meat keeps outsiders hesitant. The Virginia diner successfully transitioned this frontier necessity into a debated regional staple. Washington, green tea and pea soup. Washington's wellness culture leads to aggressive greenery. Soups made of green tea and peas represent a pursuit of health that sacrifices comfort. Outsiders find the flavor overwhelmingly medicinal and grassy. While Ivar's Acres of Clams is famous for chowder, it exists in an ecosystem pushing these hyper-nutritional boundaries. West Virginia, the pepperoni roll. The pepperoni roll is a coal miner's lunch, a plain bread roll with pepperoni baked inside. No cheese, no sauce, just grease and bread. Outsiders dismiss it as a dry, incomplete pizza pocket, failing to grasp its historical utility. Country Club Bakery fiercely protects the dry authenticity of this utilitarian staple. Wisconsin, the cannibal sandwich. And finally, Wisconsin, the cannibal sandwich. Completely raw ground beef spread on rye bread with raw onions. Despite annual, desperate warnings from the USDA about E. coli and salmonella, the tradition persists. Bunzel's Meat Market moves thousands of pounds of raw beef specifically for this perilous winter holiday ritual. Wyoming, Rocky Mountain Oysters. Sharing the cowboy tradition with Colorado, Wyoming aggressively champions Rocky Mountain Oysters, deep-fried bovine testicles. The psychological revulsion associated with eating reproductive organs makes this a permanent fixture on national disgust indices. The Mangy Moose Saloon ensures this frontier tradition continues to terrify tourists in Teton Village. Which of these foods would you actually try? And which one is a crime against humanity? Let me know in the comments.